Hello, welcome to week 4 of the Legacy Premier League. I'm Danny Batterman, alongside
Thomas Keating. Hi, everybody.
Hi, and the graphic in the front. Great job, Mike. Great job, Julian. I'm sorry. I'm admittedly a little bit in stitches about that.
Yeah, no, that was great. In the beginning, there was Richard Garfield was there too, I think, but Bob is one of the original texts, one of the original.
Well, no, Richard Garfield. When Richard Garfield was around, it was just Magic. It wasn't Legacy. Legacy was has its own origin story. But moving on to Bob's creation, as it were. We've got the last week of group stage for you guys. We've got a lot featuring the creator himself with Briksza's Death Shadow.
Quite a legacy creation we have here. So should we run through it?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's so good in Modern. I think he figured.
I was actually testing with him this list the night before he submitted it for the league, and they submitted the list I think a day after Top had been banned, and he was just looking for something really proactive, very aggressive, and just kind of liked the idea of it and was testing well, so he decided to run it.
Yeah, I don't think that's our first matchup though. I believe our first matchup is kind of, honestly, I think going to be one of the mainstays of this format.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that our first matchup this evening is going to be, as we see here, going to be Bug Delver in the hands of Rudy Briksza. And we'll get to his opponent in a second, but he'll be playing Julian Knab on Elves.
And, Julian on Elves? No, that's impossible.
I know,
Are you
right?
Sure?
It's like, there's a few players in Legacy where you kind of knew exactly what they're going to be playing. There's like Caleb Scherer on Storm. There's Julian Knab on Elves. There's Joe Lissette who's on Miracles, Honorog Doss on Miracles, but I guess, not anymore. World, something's changed, but something stay the same.
Yeah, Rudy is easily one of the, I'd say this might be one of the new mainstays of the format. Deathrite Shaman got a lot better.
Yeah,
it's kind of, that's kind of now the card to beat. I'd say it's if you aren't playing Deathrite, you have to have a very strong argument as to why you're not. So
definitely agree with you there. Deathrite Shaman was one of the best cards in Legacy before the banning, and it's one of the best cards after. But Deathrite Shaman was actually at one of its weakest points against Miracles. So when I was playing Bug Delver, I would actually even side out Deathrite Shaman against Miracles, just because it was another creature that got swept up with Terminus, didn't apply a lot of pressure, and the games went long, so you didn't need the mana advantage. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, and on the other half of the coin flip, speaking of Deathrite Shaman, we've got we've got Elves, which I think, along with Lands, is one of the two, I'd say, biggest gainers of Miracles' untimely, my 2 cents, untimely exit of the format. Oh, the only person who played Miracles longer than me in SoCal was Joe Lissette.
Okay. Very good.
I was very much a Miracles player. I played that deck for 5 years.
That's cool. Yeah, no, Miracles was a great deck. I was starting to play it, as was Bob and a couple other people in our group. So I definitely think there might have been an uptick in Miracles if it hadn't got that banhammer that particular time.
Yeah, I was all set on relaxing and not having to do Vegas and just all right, I got to learn how to play against. It was 4 matchups, and now it's oh no, Brave New World, and I think Elves is going to be leading the charge of that because it struggles a little bit against unfair decks, but it's not the worst there because it suddenly just can turn 2 out of nowhere, and it's really good at outgrinding the fair decks.
That's certainly true.
Oh man, It got so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miracles with Terminus was and the counterbalance lock was one of their worst matchups. So I think that it definitely has, without that in the format, it's definitely got a lot going for it. It's got that fast combo kill. It's got the value grind engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where those decks are in the meta. And speaking of that deck, we can take a look at these hands.
Yeah. Rudy's hand is, I mean, I think it's great. like it's got a little bit of disrupt. It's got turn 1 Deathrite. It's got Brainstorm if he needs it. It's got a fetch land to enable it. It's got Tarmogoyfs for beaters. It's got Abrupt Decay for removal. To try to stop a key component of Julian if he has the turn 2, or if he doesn't, it blows up either Wirewood Symbiote or Quarian Ranger if he tries to go long.
Yeah, so I think that you're right. Like Deathray Shaman, Tarmogoyf, that's the hand you're not going to mulligan as a Bug Delver player, but unfortunately his Bug Delver list only has 4 main deck removal spells, and they're quite slow with 2 mana cost for Abrupt Decay, which doesn't line up great against 1 mana Elf Accelerant. So, and then Julian's hand, on the other hand, has got a nice forest, a mana Accelerant, and another forest now, and so it's got some small elves and a natural order. So he's got some gas going there.
Yeah, Julian's hand allows him kind of to play both games. The Deathrite Wars have now made this a little awkward.
True.
But
True.
He's got both Wirewood Symbiote, Elvish Visionary if he needs to grind, and he's got Natural Order if he thinks the coast is clear and needs to go explosive. Right. The Crater Hoof Behemoth is kind of already, is dead in the sense that. Yeah.
But it does give him inevitability because, like, if you leave elves alone, they will get up to 8 mana to hardcast that.
Guy's Cradle is a very powerful magic card. Yeah. As I think, as was previously talked about, there's Abrupt Decay to take out Wirewood Symbiote. So
yeah, so and here he's Rudy is forced to take out the Wirewood because it can return an elf as part of its cost, and so in response to targeted removal on the Deathrite Shaman, for example, he could return it to his hand since it's an elf. So he has to go for the Wirewood Symbiote first.
Yeah, it's also just the best in my experience. It's kind of the best grindy element. It blanks attackers, which is, Rudy has Delvers, but he doesn't have Delvers in his hand.
Right.
It blanks, it allows, with the Visionary that is in play, it allows for a pile of nonsense to go on.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. And like with the Visionary that he had here, he'd be able to start bouncing that, chaining it, getting all those card draws. But the problem here for Rudy actually is that, as you can see, Julian drew the aforementioned Gaia's Cradle, which means that with 4 creatures on the battlefield, he's already approaching that 8 mana for a hardcast Crater Hoof. And in Rudy's hand, we only have 2 pieces of soft counter magic in Days, and this is in the middle of a Brainstorm, so he may even be putting some of those back.
Yeah, and I think he already played his land, so this is a Brainstorm after the fact. He keeps both Days.
I think it's EOT on Julian's turn, yeah.
Oh, it's EOT on Julian's turn. Good call. Right. Okay. Either way, he still has to draw... He still had to draw a relatively dead magic card, and Julian's hand actually is
so Julian's in a
perfectly
great spot
set up to go off if he so desires. He's got Cradle, which is going to tap for 5. He's got
6,
he's got Quarian Ranger, which allows him to tap for
Dried Arbor twice.
Dried Arbor twice, plus the Natural Order for Crater Hoof, plus potentially Natural Order. I think he's got game.
I think he's going to go for the Natural Order for a Crater Hoof here to try and win on the spot. And if he doesn't get it off this turn, say for example, already had a Force of Will, he can just go for it again. And so this is actually one of the issues with the Bug Delver deck is it's a really great deck, but its interaction costs 2 mana generally, and Abrupt Decay and Hymn to Torok. And so against a fast opponent that can really get a combo kill going on you, it can be a little too slow, and unfortunately these Dazes here, when you get to this point in the game where else has a lot of mana, they're not very effective. And Tarmogoyf's just a dumb beater that just gets ground blocked forever. So
and specifically, it was Gaia's Cradle that's what did it. Right. I think if it wasn't for the Cradle, Rudy would have been, Days wouldn't have been great. Julian can, make a lot of mana, and wisely in this play wins the Deathrite Shaman War by using Quarian Ranger to untap Deathrite and eat it again. Looks like he's just going for the hardcast Crater Hoof.
So this is what I thought was this is why I would have favored the Natural Order, I think, just because Bug Delver, maybe you have a Forest, maybe they don't. Either way, Natural Order or Crater Hoof would be eating a Forest. But if he waited one more turn, I think he would have been able to hardcast the Crater Hoof with 1 extra mana up. And the Natural Order might have just won it on the spot. But, he's going to get another crack at the apple next turn, so I wouldn't be too worried if I was in Julian's position.
Yeah, this way allows him to play around Force of Will. It might... it's especially now that Rudy only has 1 card in hand. He didn't reveal, so Julian can assume that it was safe. That it's safe. Now he only has 1 card in hand, so
true.
He naturally just with his mana gets to play around Days. The question I haven't quite done the math yet to see how big those goyfs are is, does Rudy have enough toughness on board to survive? My guess would be
experience
no.
has been generally no. Yeah, they look like they're 2/3s. They might get up to a 3/4 here when it's sorcery hitting the yard in a natural order. But you do that, you sack your visionary, and you got look at that, 6/6s and 7/7s, and there we go.
Yeah,
so I probably would have favored going for the natural order first, just because if he had a forceful, he was definitely going to force the natural order or the crater hoof. And if he had soft counter magic, then maybe you would have just went on the spot with natural order. But maybe I didn't do the math correctly on the previous turn, and he didn't quite have the damage to get there.
Yeah, it's also not unreasonable because it's to try to bait a force if to play around it at that point.
Yeah, I guess if you natural order and they do force, then you are down a creature on the next turn, which is a downside. But yep. I feel that really just turning on the soft counter magic is something that you generally want to avoid when you can, and I think that Julian could have avoided it, but he had that combo on back-to-back turns, so I don't think it really was that big of a deal.
All right, yeah, so looking at the sideboard, Rudy, I think, gets a lot better.
Yeah, so he's able to bring in some sweepers and Marsh Casualties and Golgari Charm. So that's two small sweepers. He gets to bring in a Grafdigger's Cage, a Jite, so if you can get that going, that's a menace against elves. And a Pithing Needle to maybe try and lock down some of the activated abilities, addition with another cheap removal spell and Fatal Push.
Yeah. And then Julian looks like he gets a giant grindy oops I win button in the form of Progenitus off natural order. He gets some abrupt decays to take out some of Rudy's pressure, and I think that's it. He could bring in Garruk if he wanted to, but the hand disruption seems bad. Surgical seems bad.
So Garruk is decent, but I think that he just wants to get his combo going or grind to get his combo going. I don't think he really needs to bring in the Planeswalker to try and mess around with destroying Rudy's creatures. I think he just wants to kill him. So yeah, I think leaving Garruk in the board makes sense. Taking out Rexage also makes sense, considering there's probably going to be only a few enchantments or artifacts that he cares about. Grafdigger's Cage being the biggest one.
Well, they have the full 70. They have the unlike normal tournaments, they have access to the full 75. He sees there's nothing like Knight of Soul's Betrayal. Or I'd say Engineered Plague, but Engineered Plague's very not good as is.
Well, So I mean, Julian knows elves a lot better than I, but I might even consider keeping Reclamation Sage in if you're facing a GTA and Grafdigger's Cage and you know about it.
GTA is actually pretty easy to blank with both Wirewood Symbiote and Quirion Ranger.
That's true.
So I can see him not wanting to. I can see him not minding that. Grafdigger's Cage is a reason, but at the same time, then you're going to have to how are you going to have your Reclamation Sage if Grafdigger's Cage is in play already? You've already have to have it in your hand, and what is that?
Yeah. Glimpse of Nature, Altered Art.
Nature, Altered Art, Ancestral Recall. Okay, that took me a moment.
That's great.
We'll say Learn to Love. I think 6 in chat was talking about Julian's hand not being fantastic. Not Julian's hand. Rudy's hand. Game 1 not being fantastic. I think it's close. I agree with you that the clock's a little slow and the disruption is a little light, but at the same time, you've got turn 1 Deathrite, you have some form of disruption, you have a clock, and you've got Brainstorm to try to dig for something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, he's already got down to 5. You can't mulligan that. So I agree with you on the keep, but
5 is even the 5 now. This was for this hand. It's at this 5 is you've got it was
some action. You get on the board quickly. Delver is one of the best threats against elves because it's flying, so it's basically unblockable. So yeah, so if that can get some early pressure going, that could be good. The downside here is, as you mentioned, is that he's missing some disruption. So if he can pick something up to get Julian off balance long enough for the Delver to go the distance, that could work. But it looked like Julian's trying to set up a big glimpse turn, maybe next turn. So that could be a problem.
Yeah, and Rudy wisely hacks the Quirion Ranger, which combined with Dryad Arbor gets to do disgusting things. And I don't know. Do you like Wasteland here?
So I do definitely keep Wasteland in. I think it's a fine card in this matchup because you can see you Wasteland Dryad Arbor. So now he's actually in a really good spot.
Firing it off, specifically in that turn, or would you want to hold it for the? Obviously, we knew about the Cradle in Julian's hand. So
in that situation, I just try and stop elves from getting a critical mass when you have a Delver on board. I think that's the best way to go with a Delver deck, is to just try and stop them from getting critical mass of mana and elves on the board. So I would definitely Wasteland in that situation, and I definitely like this Snapcaster Fatal Push flashback here, because now you're getting in there for 5, or I guess if you're attacking with the Deathrite Shaman, then you're getting in for 6, and so Julian's basically effectively on 1 mana now too, and another. Wow, Rudy's been getting some good draws with these fatal pushes.
Yeah, I agree. I also do like that attack with the death right from Rudy's spot because
Right.
there were no instants and sorceries in the yard for him to eat.
And gaining life doesn't help at all.
And gaining life does not do anything in this matchup. So heads up play by Rudy there. And even though he's been on what, it was a mold of 5, right?
Yeah, it was a mold of 5. Yeah, and as we said, so like all he needed was some disruption to come together once he was on board like that, and he drew a second Snapcaster Mage, which was Snapcaster Mage, which was effectively a second fatal push, and then he drew his actual second
fatal push up the top. And
so that was good draws for Rudy, but yeah, he's gonna close it out right here. I mean, he's gonna put him down to 3 and attack in the air, and that's all they wrote. So
Rudy Briksza on a mulligan to 5 looks like he's gonna force this game 3.
Yeah, no, that was that I think is how Delver wins this matchup. Is they get an early threat down, really Delver Secrets because it's unblockable with the 3 damage, and you just keep them elves off balance long enough to do that. The difficulty is that Grixis Delver is a lot. I mean, neither Grixis Delver nor Bug Delver has a great elves matchup, but Grixis Delver has more 1 mana interaction in the form of lightning bolts and out of the board maybe fork bolt or things like that. Whereas the abrupt decays are really kind of very slow to try and pull that game plan off, and Rudy only has 2 fatal pushes, so it's kind of challenging to get that going.
Saw them both. What a tilt! Yeah. What a tilt for Julian.
And you put him in the deck, you get to draw him sometimes. That's how that goes. But yeah, so I think that in general, I think Elves is favored in this matchup for because it can grind and because it can go for the combo kill. But Delver definitely has those hands. They just kind of, as you saw, just do that. But now that Julian will be on the play, that will be a lot harder to pull off.
Yeah, I completely agree with you 100% with the matchups, with the dynamic of the matchup and how the games play out, with Elves being favored in the matchup, and with Delver's effectiveness on the draw. Looked like Julian changed around the sideboarding a bit. I think he brought in a Heritage Druid and he took out a Green Suns, trying to be a little bit more explosive.
Yep.
And Rudy, I don't think touched it at all. Quick keep for both.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In both situations, I would keep that hand.
Yep.
I think Rudy's seeing what he wants to see. He's seeing a Delver of Secrets. He's seeing a cheap removal spell on Fatal Push, and he's seeing Force of Wills. So I think Rudy's hand is actually very decent right now because 2 Force of Wills those Force of Wills are really good in this matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Force of Wills is good at stopping the combo nonsense. If the deck tries to grind the card advantage, and that's really the power of Elves, is that you have to play Force of Will and have to keep them in, and you throw yourself off this card advantage cliff to not die immediately to a natural order.
And you suddenly have to deal with this army of 2/2s and 1/1s.
Suddenly, drawing cards with the Wirewood Symbiote and all this stuff. Delver does, turn 1 Delver, turn 1.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, Julian on the draw Progenitus plan is definitely, I agree, is not where he wants to be.
You don't want to draw
Progenitus. Looking to ponder for a second land, Brick City, if he's looking for land.
Brick City for the Briksza. Oh, he hit it, though, on the random draw with the shuffle. There you go, that nice animation shuffle.
Nice.
So that's a great draw here. I think if I were Rudy, I would probably deploy a second Delver here and just hope that my Force of Wills are enough to stop a quick natural order or a glimpse chain. And that's what he in fact does, yeah.
Yeah, agree 100%. And I also agree with, if you're Delver, you have to get Tropical, you have to get Underground Sea and eschew green to try to get off that him next turn.
Yep.
Which, ironically enough, might
hit Progenitus.
Might do more help than harm for Julian if he's able to strip the Progenitus out of his hand.
Well, so one thing that I think he's going to do here is that now that he sees that Julian missed his land drop, he's going to Fatal Push the Dread Arbor. And unlike Abrupt Decay, Fatal Push can hit lands. So it can definitely...
Looks like he's going for the hint, though.
Okay. So the greedy play would have been to go for the Brainstorm and hope to hit a third land and then him. Or alternatively, Brainstorm and then with the fallback of Fatal Push. So I think I probably would have gone for the Fatal Push myself, but just to keep them on 1 land.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard because at a certain point you do kind of have to use your mana.
True, and also drawing a second Hymn to Torak here means that if he does him this turn and him next turn, then Julian's not going to have a hand. But he's probably going to cast all of his spells this turn anyway. So that other him is probably not going to hold that.
Just at a certain point, you've got to be able to read an Abrupt Decay.
Also, one thing that I don't think we commented on yet is that those Nettle Sentinels are just going to town on Rudy's life. They're 2/2s and they're attacking every turn. He's got 2 of them, so that's 4 damage a turn. That's beating the Delver. So Julian's winning the race here.
Rudy's at 8. Something I didn't notice, and there was it looked like to be a Green Suns for 1, which might have gotten a third Nettle Sentinel, honestly.
Yeah, it potentially could have. I don't know. Maybe we would have got a Delver or Deathrite Shaman. I don't actually know. One of the things that we're having to do here is move at lightning speed because both of these players are extremely familiar with their decks and they are playing at a rapid pace. So,
wow,
if you're blinking, you're gonna miss it. Marsh Casualties would be great, but it's actually not so great on this board because Julian only has one creature that's 1 toughness. So, but drawing that Jite, if you just play that, untap and do it again.
Jite was big. Jite was.
So I think if you're Rudy, what I would do here is put him to Turok second down, then Misty, play the Wasteland, play the Jite, attack and pass, and then I think you get hit back for 5, you don't die, and then you can strap on the Jite, get in for 3, and have a fatal push up. And so that means that you're at 2, and you have a minimum of 5 damage coming back at you. But you can mitigate 2 of that by killing a Sentinel, so that would be 3 damage. And then you can gain 4 life with the GTA, and you can go back up to 6. So yeah, that's a kind of I'd want to think about that a little bit more if I was Rudy, which is what he did. But
it looks like that's exactly what he did. But he instead he takes out the Bayou as opposed to and decides to push now and not go for the GTA. So a little different.
Yeah, so okay. This is slower. I don't dislike it. This is slower, but it does like completely like lock him down on land. And so now he gets to
blow him out with this Marsh Casualties.
So I think that either way it might have been the same result, and Rudy would have been able to pull it out. But those were basically the 2 lines I think you could go down, either to play GTA and untapping do that, or to just Wasteland and go this route. So
yep. I don't know if it's I want to say issue with this line is Julian drew a land, which
so now you're in the situation
he can cast all of his 1-mana spells that he's been sandbagging, and
so once you hit with GTA, you basically can't lose the game so long as you don't die the turn when you get the first.
And he's forced to draw. He can't. He can fetch with the Misty if he decides to leave Delver back to block. He has to rip. He's praying to rip a land here. If he does not rip a land, or so Brainstorm is
okay. So now he's in it. Okay, so he got a little lucky, or not necessarily a little lucky, but he hit a second creature, and that was key because a second 1-mana creature. Because now he can play the GTA and the creature. Hold the Delver back to block.
No, because he can't. He's got to put 2 cards back. He's got to put 2 cards back.
Okay,
so
he can GTA, play the Delver, untap, and then he'll have 2 mana to play GTA and 2 mana to equip it. But that's not going to work because Julian's going to play I was Intimidate and
he won't be able to flip the Delver. He won't be able to flip the Delver. Because the problem is he can... Okay. So here's the issue. He needs to play Delver to block. He also needs to play GTA.
Yeah. So... He can't do that because he needs the 3rd land to play both.
He plays the Delver and has to leave Force on top.
And he has to block with the Delver this turn, and he has to block the Sentinel because he's at 2, so he can't just block the Heritage Shoot and keep it alive. So I guess what he could do, and this is I guess what he is doing, is he's gonna chump with the. So so what he can do here, and it's something he's gonna do, and I think it's actually gonna win him the game, is he's gonna attack with the Delver in the air, hit him for 3, hold back the 1/1 to block the Nettle Sentinel, go to 1, and then hit him again in the air for 3. Not need the GTA at all.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Yeah, and there's nothing.
Yeah, so Julian's now dead, but that was actually really close in the end with those little elves just kind of getting in there. So that critical turn, I think, was Rudy deciding whether or not he wanted to put the GTA down on the board or just to Wasteland and Fatal Push. And I think that either way might have worked out for him. Because once you attack with a GTA, if you don't die the next turn when you have the counters, you're going to get the counters going again, and it's really hard to stop that roll. But there you go, there you have it. Close game. Both players played really quickly. I felt we were speaking at a mile a minute here.
Yeah, sorry for that was a lot more frantic than than I'm certainly used to. But that's two masters with their decks. And candidly, 2 masters on Moto, knowing how to F2, when to F6, when to that was over in a blink of an eye. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Looking back through the chat, it seems like some people like identified some of these lines as well that we were talking about, and there was a lot going on, and it would have been great to be able to chat more with the folks or interact more with the audience, but I think we were just trying to just stay on top of what was actually happening in the game because it was a very fast game, and as a couple people commented, it was a really good one.
Yeah, that was a very tightly played match. I think. There were a lot of intense decisions made very quickly. Like that brainstorm, he took his time, but that was still,
right.
That was a brainstorm that was very easy to mess up. I don't know if I would have been able to come to that line in that spot because there was a lot going on there, and he still relatively quickly found the line that won him the game. And let's not forget, he won game 2 on a mill to 5.
Yeah, no, yeah, that was. Oh. Yeah, no, that was sorry for that slight hiccup there.
No worries.
Yeah, no, so I think you're right. I mean, that getting an early Delver down was really big in the second game, and that took him the distance. But that's the power of Delver Secrets. It's still an amazing Magic card.
Yeah. So
Cook 3289. Julian did lose in 3 games, and it was a tight one in the end. There, it was really tight. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think that's basically everything I've got to say on this match. That was fast paced, action filled, and pretty tight Magic from both parties.
Yeah, no, I think so. And again, as I mentioned before, I think that these players were both showing that they know their stuff, especially with these decks, because there was not a lot of hesitation in that game. And even when there was a complex brainstorm to resolve, Rudy didn't like enter the tank and think and take too long to think through. Like we were still talking out loud, trying to think of the different options he had, and he was already on to making a play and proceeding. So I think that was some great Magic, good tension at the end there. It came down to the wire. Winning the game at 1 life is a pretty good feeling, and it means that there's a good amount of back and forth there.
The word I think SG Doc or either SG Doc or Loading Ready Run. The 1 is not 0 emote. We need someone to type that in the chat.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Yeah. So that was a good match. I like that. So in my experience, Bug Delver versus Elves, that's one of the ways it can end down with the Delver and the Elves just kind of like going back and forth, hitting each other, trying to get a little bit of jockeying for position. And then if the Bug Delver player has enough removal or a mass removal as he did, then that can be enough to throw it to get it done. On the other hand, Elves with the combo, if you'd gotten that off, that would have been lights out too.
Yep.
Well, excellent stuff. So I think we have another match that's going to get primed and ready to go right here. I don't know exactly what our timing is like on that, but
this is a pre-recorded match. Was once again Rudy versus Manaless Dredge.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, Manaless Dredge. Dredge, an old school terror of the format of Scourge, depending on your perspective. Obviously, a beloved part of the metagame. Attacks on a very different axis coming out of the graveyard. It unusually for, well, not necessarily unusually for Legacy, but I guess actually no, in line with Legacy, other decks, it wins with creatures, but not creatures that it pays for fairly. It cheats them in through the graveyard. I guess like Sneak and Show, or they sneak them in through Sneak Attack or Throw and Tell. So
yeah, it's the way I always kind of phrase it is it's you're not playing Magic, you're playing Dredge.
Right. Dredge the
like
Gathering.
It's these are played with Magic the Gathering cards. They the deck is played with Magic the Gathering cards. It is, does technically, I suppose, you can register at Magic the Gathering tournaments, but it's not Magic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean you're drawing way more cards a turn, and you're ignoring one of the main parts of Magic, which is the resource thing. So,
and with that, let's go to a quick word to our sponsors and get match 2 primed up.
Yep.